You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast, presented by Pat's Pulpit.
All right, welcome to today's Patriot Nation podcast. As always, your boy Pat Lane here, joined today by the wonderful, stupendous, amazing, smart, and beautiful Mark Schofield. Mark, thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate always love talking to you. So thanks for coming on with us.
Well, Pat, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. I'm disappointed that Matt's ducking me. Apparently, There's a sport that's played with an orange ball, and there's some stuff going on tonight. Something called the Big East tournament that might be drawing his attention. But I'll catch up with Matt at another time. But I'm excited to be here with you, buddy.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate you coming through even without Matt. So we like it. And listen, I mean, you are partly responsible for, if not wholly responsible, for this union, because I met Matt through the Schofield Sack channel, and so and that's where.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry for that. Matt's awesome. You guys are awesome together. I'm so glad you guys are crushing it on this show. I'm a huge fan, and I'm honored to be here, as I am every time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Well, thank you. Thanks for the kind words. And so you're fresh off the combine. And so, of course, you know, draft talk has been kind of dominating everything, right? Draft circles. And we might get into some draft stuff. But next Monday is the official start of free agency, where, you know, I mean, no agents and teams have had any discussions up until this point. And so no one will talk at all until next Monday. No, nothing.
Absolutely nothing happened in Indianapolis at high velocity at 3 a.m. every night.
No shot. Nope. No. So starting on Monday, there basically is the start of free agency, essentially, right? And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. As much as the draft is important, of course, I think the Patriots are in an interesting position here because, yes, they won 8 games and missed the playoffs last year, but they had a pretty good shot of winning some of those games they lost, and kind of uncharacteristically lost some of those games. You think with better coaching, which you assume they're going to have this year, and with more development from some of their players, that they can be a 10 or 11 win team. And so, you know, obviously you want to get guys for the draft, but it is going to be interesting to see what they do with a decent amount of cap space that they have too. So I think the free agency, although I feel like everyone's kind of rushing to the draft, as we kind of always do, free agency I feel like is going to be extremely important for the Patriots this offseason.
Yeah, it could be transformative in a way. And obviously, look, I know we're going to get into some decisions they have to make about, you know, their own sort of players that are hitting free agency, given that they haven't used the tag. But there's a potential for this to be transformative. And I think it's important to have the free agency discussion almost parallel in a sense to the draft discussion, because there are some positions of depth in this draft class. There are some positions that are a little thin, and that might impact free agency. That might impact the two sort of prime free agents on New England right now, or with New England, with Jacoby Myers and Jonathan Jones. I mean, because wide receiver, not the kind of depth in the wide receiver class that we've seen in years past. Cornerback, however, is a very deep group, very talented group. You might see 6-7 corners in the first round. And so, you know, it's important to have this conversation in tandem, because what you might do in free agency, you can sort of have an inkling of what you can and can't get away with because of what's in the draft class, or you might feel that you have to do something because of what might not be in the draft class.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So we will get into Jacoby Myers and John Jones. I want to start with someone who is not technically a free agent, I guess, but is a free agent if you want him to be, and that's Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the Patriots have Mac Jones. I think everyone is pretty confident in saying that Lamar Jackson is better than Mac Jones. But the question becomes, you know, I mean, people are now, you know, getting into this whole collusion thing about, you know, are they not paying them because they don't want, you know, who knows what the heck is going on. But my question to you, Mark, is there a world in which you think the Patriots would be willing to, or should, maybe they wouldn't be willing to do it, but should they give up 2 first-round draft picks and make Lamar Jackson the highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
I mean, I think it's worth at least figuring out what it would take to sign him. What kind of deal it would take. Is he worth 2 first-round picks? I think so. Is he worth a fully guaranteed contract? That's where it gets a little bit hazy, because we are talking about a quarterback that missed sort of the stretch run. And, one of the things that I like about Lamar, there are a lot of things I like about Lamar Jackson. He tends to be as explosive and as creative a ball carrier and an athlete that he is. For the most part, he's avoided contact. He's an evader. He's like, if you think of Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Hurts is a more physical kind of runner as a quarterback. Lamar is more of what you might call an evader. He avoids contact. He dips, he slides, and things like that. But you've had these past 2 years now where he's dealt with injuries. And so that might be the reason why teams like perhaps potentially the New England Patriots are a little bit hesitant about exploring a Lamar Jackson signing, about giving up 2 first-round picks to do it. You mentioned the sort of collusion idea. And certainly, when it came out on Tuesday that he got the non-exclusive tag, and within it seemed like a half an hour, 5 teams had said, look, we're not going after Lamar Jackson. It did smell a little fishy, but I also think that other things could be at work here. One, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, after sleeping on it last night, we're in this sort of post-Dolphins tampering penalty world, right? And even sort of off the record anonymous sources, if it comes out before the legal tampering period that, yes, the Atlanta Falcons are going to pursue Lamar Jackson, that might set off some alarm bells, at 345 Park Avenue. And new NFL people might start wondering what's going on here. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if if all of these teams that have come out and said, no, we're not interested, turn around on Monday and say, yeah, we're interested. It's Lamar Jackson. We just couldn't say anything yet. So I'm kind of waiting to see if the storyline changes. There also, I think, is some truth to the idea that NFL owners, by and large, are still unhappy over the Deshaun Watson contract, fully guaranteed contract, because A, they don't want to go down that road of fully guaranteeing quarterback contracts. B, you have to have the escrow money to be able to sign that deal. And, coming up with the millions that it would take to do that, that's not easy. And so there's that angle to it as well. But it's sort of in a vacuum. Lamar Jackson, injuries, yes, it's a part of the discussion and the calculus. He's an extremely talented quarterback. I've got Bobby Petrino's book on my shelf just out of reach right here. And he talks about, the things that Lamar did at Louisville, the offense that he ran at Louisville. There's been this idea that he can't play from the pocket. That's why I think, I haven't confirmed it, but Petrino titled his book Inside the Pocket, because he's saying, look, Lamar can play from the pocket. Yeah. And we know Belichick is a fan of his. He said it at the start of the year when these 2 teams played about how he's proven everybody wrong and all of that. And how, when he was asked, how good is he basically said his next contract's going to answer that question. I mean, would Belichick be the one to pay that? I don't know. But I think you at least do the due diligence route of what would it take. And if they come back and if you find out that, it's, 5 years, $450 million, all of it guaranteed or something outlandish, and they say, all right, well, now we know, and you move on. But if it's something that's reasonable and it's something you're willing to pay, you give up 2 first rounds for him.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation because I think, Lamar's going to be 26 this year. I mean, he's crazy young. Yep. You don't see quarterbacks that age who are former MVPs, who play at the level that Lamar plays at. And it's interesting. We talk about the injuries, but, the NFLPA does their thing. The Ravens come out as like an F- in their training staff. Matthew Judon, Carl Davis, Rashad Bateman, who's currently playing there, all talk about how terrible, the training staff is there. Maybe that has something to do with it. Like he played for the first 3 years of his career. He played every game, right? And he didn't play every game his rookie year because he didn't start every game his rookie year, but he played every game the first 3 years of his career. And then now he's missing time. Like, does that have something to do with the Ravens? And of course, no way to know that, right? But maybe he does, And so maybe he goes somewhere else and he's different. The other problem, if you're the Patriots, is that, yes, it's a non-exclusive tag. That's true. But the Ravens can always match what you pay. And
Right.
so if you go out there and you offer a ridiculous contract, you make Lamar the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, and the Ravens turn around and go, yeah, okay, we'll pay him that, and they match your contract. Now you're sitting here like, oh, no, we love Mac Jones. We're totally bought into Mac Jones. When it's like, well, no, actually, you're not. You just offered to make Lamar the highest paid quarterback in NFL history.
Benjamin Albright brought that up on social media during the day on Wednesday. Basically said, like, that might be a reason why these 5 teams have come out and said that they're not going to do that, because locker rooms are what they are, and it's a way to sort of potentially fracture a locker room. The corollary to that is you got to have thick skin to play quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
You're one of 32 people to have this job, and you have to understand, you have to have that approach that, look, maybe they want to go. If you're Mac Jones, yeah, sure. Okay. You signed Lamar to an offer sheet and the Ravens matched it. Okay. Now I'm going to continue to prove you why that was wrong. I mean, you have to we were spoiled for 20 years of Tom Brady, but that was a man that every time he took the field, even at practice, even late in his Patriots career, still felt like he had to prove like he was the best starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. We kind of have to have that sort of mindset. And we have seen some other organizations when they draft a young quarterback, the starter sort of loses confidence. You look at the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts situation.
Mm-hmm.
If your starting quarterback is going to sort of crumble because you entertain the idea of another option because they weren't playing up to par, that might tell you something that you need to know.
Right.
So, I understand that, the idea that if it falls through, then you have to go back sort of tail between your legs. And I get some of that. But at the same time, look, these quarterbacks know that you either perform, you get better, or it's a business. They're going to find somebody better than you. They're going to find somebody, they're going to look for somebody that's better than you. And so it's a business. And, if they decide to go down the Lamar road and it doesn't work out, they'll move forward with Mac Jones, and he'll have to understand that, look, you play better and you won't have to worry about this.
Well, and that's really what it comes down to, right? You play at an MVP level, and we're willing to pay that much money for a quarterback that's going to win and be that good. And if you can be that good, then we'll pay you because you deserve it, right? And so
exactly.
And that's I think it's a great point, right? And so it's fascinating to see what's going to happen. I don't know if anyone's going to make an offer, but I almost wonder too, is Baltimore looking at this as an opportunity to say, let's do the non-exclusive instead of the exclusive. Number one, we'll pay a little bit extra. We'll pay a little bit less, this season. And number two, let's let another team do the negotiating for us. And then we can come back and say, yep, that's around what we were looking for. Or, yeah, maybe it's a little bit more than we want to pay, but I don't mind, right? Or then you sit there and say, no, we can't do that, but we'll take 2 first-round picks instead, And so I think it's kind of smart on their part.
Yeah, Pat, I do think there's some truth to that. Schefter was talking about that earlier today, to basically saying that, they've been trying for 2 years between Lamar and the Ravens to get a deal done. They haven't. So now it's sort of like, my old background, the legal world. It's like going to mediation or to an arbitrator. You're basically saying, all right, tell us what this case is worth. Here, tell us what this contract is worth. And if a team comes back and signs into an offer sheet that's in the ballpark of what they were willing to do, it's okay. Now we've got a benchmark. This is what other teams are willing to do. We're willing to pay it maybe a little more than we wanted, or from Lamar's perspective, a little less than he wanted, but they can get it done that way. And the other thing I think it's important to keep in mind, the non-exclusive franchise tag, like you said, it's cheaper. That's, a way to get their cap position a little bit more manageable, because they have to get cap compliant here in the next couple of days, and they're over the cap. So that makes it a little bit more manageable from that standpoint as well. If you sign up to the exclusive tag, he's a Baltimore Raven next year, but it's another $13 million that you have to go find somewhere else. And so I think that's part of this whole scenario as well.
Yep. No, that's a great point. It's a great point. All right, let's move on to who the Patriots are looking at right now. And I really want to talk about 3 guys in particular that are going to be free agents this year, and, have the possibility of walking away, and whether the Patriots will bring them back or not. Obviously, we talked about 2 of them, Jacoby Myers and John Jones. And the third one for me is Peppers. I think Peppers brought something to the defense that they didn't have before he came. And so I'm curious about, number one, if you think those 3 guys will be back, and number 2, If not, what kind of money do you think they'll get on the open market?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of where the draft conversation comes in, because I think it's looking at this wide receiver class. It's not the kind of depth that it was that we've seen in recent years, number one. And then you look at the rest of this free agency class. Jacoby Myers, whether it's myself, whether it's other outlets, PFF, whomever, he's looked at as the top free agent in the wide receiver market. And you can see where this is going. Teams that have a need a wide receiver, that's who they're probably going to go to first. You're probably looking at a deal somewhere in the neighborhood of 16, 17 million per. I don't know if New England's going to do that. And when you're talking about a weak free agency class overall, that he's the sort of cream of the crop of, when you're talking about a weaker draft class than we've seen in recent years, it almost feels like there's going to be a bidding war for Jacoby Myers, which all credit to him. I mean, that's fantastic for him. It seems like this is trending towards, well, the Patriots want to win that bidding war when there are other positions that they might want to address that they could even address perhaps in free agency, such as adding an offensive lineman, adding a tackle. They could go that road. Yeah. So Myers feels like, as much as I'd love to have him back, and particularly if, Mac Jones is sitting here right now, unless something crazy happens, is your starting quarterback, there's that relationship, that chemistry between those two. That's a big part of getting Mac to where he needs to be, in addition to better coaching Bill O'Brien and all of that. So as much as I'd love to see Jacoby Myers back, the numbers and the finances and the mere fact that this free agency class, this draft class, might be a little bit weaker overall, it doesn't feel good. Yeah. I'm with you on Peppers. I'd like to see him back. And I'd love to see Jonathan Jones back. I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Jones. I did my top 5 corners in free agency that came out this morning. He was number 3 for me. I've always been a fan of his game. And the main reason is, look, when Belichick says, all right, we're facing Miami and Tyreek Hill, and that's who you're covering. Or even years prior, we're facing Kansas City, and we're worried about Kelsey and all those guys. We're worried about Tyreek Hill. So Jonathan Jones, that's your guy. I think that speaks volumes. And the fact that, he adjusted to life on the outside, he tailed off at the end of the year. Yeah, sure. But adjusted to life on the outside, certainly can play on the inside. I'd love to have him back, and I'd love to have, maybe an additional corner added in the draft, because I think it's a very deep draft class. And I think the fact that it is a deep draft class might mean there's a bit softer market free agent wise for cornerback. So, Jonathan Jones might go out there, explore the free agency market. It's not as hot a free agency market for his position as it is to, say, the wide receiver position. And that might be conducive to him coming back on a new deal.
Yeah. I love the point about Jones. I have a hard time wanting to overextend myself for him, because I feel like he is limited to that inside role, and he played okay on the outside. He played all right, but he can't cover those guys. He can't be like your number one corner. And I think
he's probably more a CB2 type, like, the big traditional prototypical X's, like, they gave him trouble, and, and that's why I think you can bring him back, have him inside, have him CB2 type role, and maybe add somebody in the draft. Right. I think, because it's like pitching. You can never have enough defenders in the secondary. Like, you got to have a ton of it. That's kind of the scenario that I'm envisioning, because you're right. And I think that will also lend itself to the idea that, a guy like Jamal Dean or somebody else might be a more sought after corner.
Right. He
might not see the market out there. Again, compared it to the Jacoby Myers situation, he's not going to probably see the kind of hot market that Myers will see once we get to next week.
Right. That's a great point. And, I agree with you 100% on Myers. I really wish they could bring him back. And I'm still hopeful that they could bring him back, but I'm not holding my breath, because I do think someone's going to go out there and give him, now, maybe not exactly what Christian Kirk got last. I think Christian Kirk got 4 for 84 or something like that last year.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to get quite that much, but he's going to get somewhere in that 17 to 20 range. And to me, that's just, I can't pay that for Jacoby. I can't do it. I can't do that for Jacoby Myers. Now, the issue is, I don't want them to let Jacoby Myers go and then send 46 to Arizona for DeAndre Hopkins either, because I feel like Hopkins, while he's good, obviously, he's not the player that he once was. I don't think, at least. And he never had that breakaway speed necessarily.
Yeah, I
As he's
mean,
getting older, I don't know. That's a real tough one for me. For maybe 76, I'm in. 46, I don't know. That's too early for me.
yeah, I mean, the thing with Hopkins is one of the things that he does well is something that I think Mac needs, which is that guy that's going to win in a phone booth. Like,
Yeah.
a strength of his is certainly his ability to make plays at the catch point, to win at the catch point. And yeah, he's not a burner. He's not going to really run away from people, but the tough catches to move the chains, the ability to make the throw and expand the throwing window just by his style of play, I think is something that we saw at times with Devontae Parker last year, and it certainly helped Mac Jones a little bit. And I think it's an element that's missing from this offense. And so I'd like to see it. But yeah, I mean, which pick would you give up to do that? That's tough, especially when, the talk at Indy last week, as it is, I think every draft is like, 20 to 60, 20 to 70 is like the strength of the draft. Like that's where you're going to find really good players, and to give up a pick in that range.
Right.
Yeah. But then it also gets to the mystery box thing from Family Guy, right? Which is like, oh, you could draft somebody that could be great there. They could even be DeAndre Hopkins.
Right.
It has that element to it as well.
Yeah, it's very true. It's a good point. That's great. That's a great analogy too, by the way. I like that one.
I love the Family Guy mystery box. We use it all the time. I've seen it like 10 times on Twitter today. I saw it with a bunch of, the Detroit Lions talking about, we shouldn't, go after Lamar Jackson. We can draft a quarterback. And it's like, well, that quarterback could be great. He could be Lamar Jackson. Like,
right.
We could use that Family Guy reference all the time during draft season.
Yeah, I love it. And if you don't know what that is, go Google it. It's worth it. So tackle is another position I think that's extremely important. Of course, there's some left tackles out there. Supposedly the Patriots are bought in on Trent Brown. I mean, I guess, sure, why not? I feel like, and I said to Matt last week, I feel like we made this mistake with Isaiah Wynn, where we said, it's only $10 million. If he's a starting left tackle, that's a good deal for $10 million. But is he a competent starting left tackle? I don't know that about Trent Brown anymore. Now, maybe he can be, but I don't know if Trent Brown is a competent starting left tackle. And so, yeah, it's only $11 million for him, but is it worth it? Like, if I cut him and sign Orlando Brown, am I getting significantly better? And Orlando Brown may not be the guy either, because I might have concerns about his buy-in and his really want to, which is kind of what I'm concerned about with Trent Brown. So maybe he's not the guy, but is there a guy out there that I'm looking at saying, yeah, I like his upside better than I like Trent Brown's, and so I'm going to cut Brown and kind of move on from there,
Yeah, I mean, as far as a sort of tackle group and free agency, I mean, Brown's probably the best player. I mean, Brandon Thorne released his sort of free agency tiers and rankings, and he's got Brown at the top. But, Jawan Taylor, he's just 25. He could be in the mix.
Yeah.
Josh Nijman, the Packers offensive tackle,
Mm-hmm.
he's out there, and he's a player to keep in mind. And a lot of people talk about McGlinchey. That would be more of a right tackle move, obviously, because he's a right tackle. But, you could have Brown at left tackle. If you're sold on Brown at left tackle, McGlinchey at right tackle, that could work. I mean, this is one of those positions where there are options in the draft. The Northwestern kid, Skoronski, I know the arm length issue is there. And I actually talked to Brandon out in Indianapolis, because Brandon was out there as well. He had an interesting comparison for him. He said he's Joe Thuney, which, okay, well, that's a great offensive lineman, technically sound offensive lineman, but probably some of it ends up kicking inside to guard. And so maybe that's not the way you go.
Right.
But I mean, I'm higher on Brown than you are. I think he can still play at a high level. And I think, watching and studying that Chiefs offense, that's a hard quarterback to play tackle in front of. I mean, because he's not always where he's supposed to be. And that's part of the magic of Mahomes, is that, he moves around a lot, he can create. But if you're setting up expecting him to be at 8 yards and he's not, he can look bad in the blink of an eye. I think he could work in New England, and then, maybe decide you Brown back to the right side. I mean, that could work.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. So I am interested to kind of see what they'll do. And then, like you say, you got guys in the draft. I love Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Yeah. But he's not the only one. There's a bunch of guys. And even, when you switch over to the right side, you get DeJuan Jones, who played on the right side at Ohio State, right? And there's a bunch of talent at that position. So I do think even if you don't go out and get one of those guys, I don't know if McGlinchey or Taylor are necessarily fits for the Patriots. But even if you don't go out and get one of those guys in free agency, there are tackles
There
to be
are
had.
options in the draft. I
Right.
mean, whether it's 14, whether it's the second round, like, depending on how free agency shakes out. Like, this is a position group where I don't feel like you need to force it, like in the free agency, because there are going to be options. It's one of the deeper position groups in the draft.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. So I'm interested in that. All right, give me a guy, because there's one or two more guys I want to talk about, but give me a guy who may not be on everyone's radar as a target for the Patriots, but you think the Patriots should target in free agency.
I mean, there's a couple. I mean, depending on what they do at corner, I watched a lot of Cameron Sutton over the past couple of days, and I came away really impressed with him. Extremely versatile. Like, he moved outside, similar to Jonathan Jones of these past 2 years, but played extremely well. He had an interception against the Raiders where they actually rotated to an inverted cover 2. So he's in a half field safety role, breaks on the route of the middle of the field, and makes an incredible interception. So very versatile player. So depending on what they do there at the cornerback spot, that's a name to keep in mind. Another corner, I know Rock Yassin. I know, our good friend Taylor has talked about him. That's another name that I'm very intrigued by. Again, without Jonathan Jones. Mm-hmm. I know we talked about the wide receiver class and how it's not great, but I've kind of got a soft spot for Darius Slayton. I don't know why. I've always kind of liked him.
Yeah.
From my year of watching, Daniel Jones. And I know that, look, that passing game wasn't great. And, Saquon Barkley was basically their leading receiver, and other guys sort of emerged. But I have kind of liked him, and he's probably going to come pretty cheap. Right. He's not it's not like Kenny Golladay, like absolutely not. Like, I can't talk myself into that one. But Slayton always kind of intrigued me as sort of a later, late in free agency, phase 2, phase 3, which is sometimes where the Patriots sort of nibble around anyway. And then depending on what happens at safety, Jordan Poyer is fantastic. He's awesome. I would love to have him. I mean,
it would be incredible.
It would be incredible. Julian Love, another member of the Giants. Yeah. I watched a lot of him this summer for a project I was working on. Very versatile, can play, post safety, can play half field. You can bring him down into the box. You can bring him in the slot. There's some overlay with some guys that they have, but if Peppers is elsewhere and, you're looking for another player that can be that sort of versatile type safety, I like him.
Yeah. Those are all good names to look at. So I'm intrigued by that. The Sutton one I hadn't really noted. It wasn't on my radar. So I'm
I
put Cam Sutton on my radar.
Was watching him. I was really kind of watching him before it was, I had F1 on one screen. I had Cameron Sutton tape on the other. I was getting ready to board my flight home. And I was like, oh, this kid can play, man.
Yeah. I like it. And that's totally something Patriots should do. Go for a guy who's like off the radar a little bit. Everyone's talking about, Rock Yassin and Jamel Dean and John Jones, and they go for Cam Sutton. You know what I mean? So, and then he comes in and balls out. It seems like that type of guy. Yep. So, who was the guy? So, Devin McCourty, what do you think? Back? Not. What percentage chance? You think so?
Yeah, I'd say it's 60-40. He's back.
Yeah.
I think Slater coming back is kind of a nod to where, they might want to get together for one more run with these veterans. He could still play at a really high level. I mean, I don't think that's the question. I think it's just a matter of, again, you start getting a little on the older side, is going through all of it, what it takes to play at a high level. Is it something you want to do? Is it something you want to commit to? Because it's not easy, But I think he's back. Had Slater retired, I would have felt like, okay, yeah, this sort of the veteran leadership core is starting to think about handing it up. But with Slater back, something tells me Devin's back one more season.
I like it. Sark Blue Gold thinks Josh Gordon, but maybe not.
Yeah.
One more guy I wanted to ask you about, and this is kind of a rookie and a free agent, and I just think that the Patriots have been longing for an athletic linebacker, right? A guy that can play. You look at Cam McGrone they drafted. He didn't work out. You sign Raekwon McMillan, he didn't work out. You trade for Mac Wilson, he didn't work out. So you haven't been able to find that guy. And even Josh Uche, they tried to like make him a linebacker, and he wasn't. But they were like, oh, we can use. But the guy in free agency right now is Tremaine Edmunds. He's got some real athleticism. The Bills, I think it's funny because I follow a few Bills guys, and Spence and Jiminy Christmas. What the hell is his name? Anyways, doesn't matter. Spence was what loved him. And, Bills fans would always be trashing him. And he's like, listen, one day, Greg Thompson is the one I'm thinking of. Greg and Spence would be like, one day you're gonna realize this guy's pretty good. And now he's a free agent. And all Bills fans are like, well, we should keep him. And they're like, yeah, we've been telling you this. But anyways, Jermaine Evans is a guy, I think he might be expensive. And so I don't know if the Patriots are willing to do that. But a guy that I think, they're different, but Jack Campbell to me is one of the guys that he's got the size, he's got the power, but I was shocked at his numbers at the combine. Blew me away at his athleticism. And so he's the size, and Edmonds is too. These two guys are the size that the Patriots are looking for from the linebacker position, can play out there, but also can actually cover and run sideline to sideline. I'm just curious about what your thoughts are about Edmonds potentially coming here, and then also about Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have Edmonds because you're doing two things. You're getting that athleticism in a young linebacker that, early in his career, like the coverage wasn't there, the awareness, the recognition, like those parts of his game weren't there, but he's gotten better over the last two seasons, I'd say. So you're adding an athletic linebacker who's young, who's explosive, who's got experience, even though he's relatively young. And I was on WGR in Buffalo just 6 hours ago. I was on this afternoon with Schofield and the Bulldog, and they're like starting to panic in Buffalo because they're up against it from the cap.
Yeah.
They might lose Poyer. They're probably going to lose Edmonds. You're weakening a division rival as well.
Right.
I mean, you're taking away from Buffalo. And as I said on the air with them, look, we're living in this sub-package world where you're playing, nickel is the new base or whatever phrase you want to use. If you're going to go sub, you need to have athletic linebackers that can match number 3 and carry number 3 vertically if they have to. Look at Fred Warner and what he does in San Francisco for examples of, a linebacker carrying number 3 vertically and still play against the run. And Edmonds can do that as well. I would love to see him here. And, when you get to the sort of draft class, I think what Campbell did in Indianapolis is eye-popping. I mean, it's one of those like, wait, I got to go back and rewatch because I must have – did I miss this? Because we saw some athleticism on film, but that's like, elite upper tier 9.98 on the RAS relative athletic scoring system from Kentley Platt. That's a tremendous performance. And so – if they could swing Edmonds, I know off-ball linebacker, there are some that think, you don't pay off-ball linebackers, but when you have athletic off-ball linebackers that can do the things you need them to do in the coverage game, that can run with slot receivers and athletic tight ends up at the seams and carry those when you're in too high structures or when you're in a 3 up is 3 situation, that's huge. And so I would definitely, more than kick the tires on Tremaine Edmonds. Yeah, you've got other positions like we've talked about, but you're making your defense more athletic. You're making your second level more athletic, which is something Patriots fans have been clamoring for since Super Bowl 52.
Yep.
And you're taking them away from Buffalo.
Yeah, agreed. I couldn't agree more. And it's a position that I think the Patriots should target, and especially when you have athletic guys that can play, and even like you mentioned Edmonds. Struggled the first few years. Yeah. Jack Campbell might have all the athleticism in the world. He might have more than we saw, but is he going to be good right out of the chute? And now it's like
the mystery box analogy again. It's like Jack Campbell could be great. He could be Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the question you got to answer. And so I think it's worth a shot. And like you say, man, making Buffalo worse and bringing him and that kid balling out twice a year against Buffalo would be awesome. Yeah. So anyway, so that's what I got. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to get off your chest about free agency and or the draft.
Not yet. I I will say this: the combine in Indianapolis. I don't want to cause too much panic, but I will tell a quick story. So Friday morning, that's the day that the quarterbacks address the media.
Yep.
Bryce Young's going at 8:00, CJ Stroud at 8:20, Anthony Richardson at 8:40. And so I went to bed early the night before. I was a good little boy. I didn't go out, didn't stay out late because I wanted to be, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed for Bryce Young. So I get over to the Hall J in the convention center at 7:30, and there's already the crowd around Bryce Young's podium. And so I weave my way into the first couple of rows, and why is Evan Lazar standing next to me? And I'm like, Evan, is there something I need to know? And he's like, no. I'm going to try to ask him some questions about Bill O'Brien. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And he shouted his questions. Bryce didn't call on him. But then 8:20, it's CJ Stroud, and I'm still surrounded by Patriots beat writers. And then Anthony Richardson at 8:40, there's still Patriots beat writers around me. And so I don't know what to take from that. But I mean, I think they were just, it's quarterback day. So they're talking to the top 3 quarterbacks because it's going to make good content no matter what, because, hey, maybe one finds their way to the Jets, or maybe one finds their way to the Las Vegas Raiders or the Colts or another AFC team. And you've got some content there. But I just thought it was funny. One of my favorite things about the combine is to see, first, Maddie Glab, she's one of the Bills inside team reporters. She was in front of Osiris Torrance and a lot of interior offensive linemen. And so it's a good way to gauge how teams and what teams are thinking, to see what teams beat writers are in front of which position groups. And so when I saw some familiar faces in front of Bryce Young, Spidey sense started to tingle a little bit.
Oh, baby. All right. I said I had one more question, but I do have one final question for you. Mac Jones, some stupid report. We'll see if it's an actual report or not. Supposedly, Vegas was interested in trading for Mac. I think it's a fake report. Vegas interested in trading for Mac Jones. Would you consider that, assuming you're not getting number 7, right? But would you consider that for, I think they're drafting 38. 38 is where they are. If they threw in 38, 70, and a second-round pick next year for Mac Jones, would you do that under the assumption that you might be able to get a new quarterback at 14? Or
you're not getting, see,
that's the problem.
You're not getting a quarterback at 14. See, right. You would have to then package 14 and 39 to get up. And I just don't know. Now, the interesting thing coming out of Indianapolis, there's these dual tracking stories. One is Richardson could go 1 overall. And the other is, because Richardson did so well, the market for that first overall pick might not be as hot as Chicago would have liked, because if you like both Stroud and Richardson, or Stroud, Richardson, and Young, and you're Las Vegas at 7, you could sort of sit there and draft him.
Yeah.
But I don't think QB4, whoever it is getting past, sitting here right now, Carolina at 9. Now, I assume Carolina's going to move up. And so the idea that you're getting 38 or 39, whichever their second round pick is, at 71, okay, that's great. That gets you to the 30-yard line. You still got to get through you're not even in the red zone yet in terms of getting one of these top 4. Now, if they turn around and say, we'll give you 7, I mean, I think you entertain that one. As much as I'd like to see Mac Jones have success, if you're given the 7th overall pick, that gets you closer to one of these guys, but he still might not even be there. And so,
right.
No, it's a tough call. But I think that report that is out there, I think it's sort of some dot connecting more than anything else. Josh McDaniels coached Mac Jones, and but I mean, I think even if you're Josh McDaniels, it's we could get year 3 of Mac Jones, or our guy to build around, whether it's Richardson or Stroud or whomever they end up drafting. And so
I think for them, it makes no sense. Why trade number 7 overall for Mac Jones when he's going into the 3rd year of his rookie contract? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. I mean, if you get, CJ Stroud for the entirety of his rookie deal, then that's the path that teams are taking, which is that rookie quarterback deal.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Well, this has been great. Mark. Before you go, please, plug yourself, tell everyone where they can read you and see you and hear you and everything else. And, and then we'll send you on your way, sir.
Well, Pat, always a blast, buddy. Great to be here. Great to chat with you. I'll hunt Matt down and tell him how disappointed I am that he's ducking me. Social media at Mark Schofield. Can I do it right? Nope, didn't do it. But there it is, right over there.
There it is.
Right
Got it.
there it is. Close enough. SBNation.com, where they've got me doing everything. Look, I got to hop off here because tonight we get the Big Sky Conference Final.
Oh, baby.
We got Northern Arizona. They came into the tournament at 9-22 with one more win. They're going to get into the big dance.
That's awesome.
If they beat Montana State tonight.
Oh, let's
that
go.
That tips off at 11:30 on the East Coast. My eyes glued to that because they got me right in college basketball. And they got me doing a lot of Formula One, which I'm really excited about. Turned my fandom for F1 into an actual business. So we're enjoying that. Yes, watch. I'll tell you, easiest way to do it, okay? Have you seen the Drive to Survive show?
I haven't, but I've heard of it on Netflix, right?
Okay. It's on Netflix. It's fantastic. Yes, it's overly dramatic and over the top, and it's like they're really playing stuff up, and it's not completely real, but it will get you hooked because that got my wife into it. I mean, she watched that, and now look, we're watching races, we're watching quali, like
I love it.
Whole 9 yards. I mean, we're thinking about like maybe going to a race someday. She's buying me like shirts and stuff. Like,
that's great.
Give Drive to Survive a shot. Like, I think you'll enjoy it. But
all right,
it's super fun. And look, Fernando Alonso, look, we love him. It's great to see him winning. I'm on a podium again.
I'm a fan. All right, I'll have to check it out. I will then have to check it out. Mark, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. And we are doing our live first round coverage again on YouTube. So of course you're welcome to join again this year if you'd like.
I think I'm gonna be around. I don't know what they're gonna have me doing, but I'm sure I can dip away for a couple of picks at least.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
All right, sir. Have yourself a great night, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
Sounds great, buddy.
All right, take care. All right, so that's it. Mark, we love having Mark on. Mark, he's the best. And so, of course, not at Pat's Pulpit anymore, but still on SB Nation, writes now for SB Nation kind of all sorts of different things. And so he does a great job over there, and we appreciate him coming on. Just one or two more things. First of all, hello, Thad. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it. Jimmy G to the Raiders. That'd be interesting. Appreciate that. And also, did Teddy? Yep, a little shout out from Teddy. Appreciate that. But anyways, I do think, of course, free agency does start this weekend, or I guess Monday, technically. We'll hear about all that stuff starting noon on Monday. And just like always, I'm sure those things will be flying as soon as noon hits. There'll be a ton of different things. And I remember, we had to do an instant reaction show 2 years ago because of the Hunter Henry news, and they signed Hunter Henry and Matthew Judon. I'm sorry, they signed Matthew Judon and Jonnu Smith, and then the next day they signed Hunter Henry too. So, a lot of, hopefully we'll have some instant reaction podcasts coming up next week. But anyways, it is really interesting. I'm fascinated to see where the Patriots go, because as I said to Mark, I think they're a better team than 8 and 9. I think they're better than that, and because of that, they are in this weird situation where it's like, well, we don't really want to tank. Not that we don't want to tank, but we don't necessarily want to just draft rookies. We also want to rebuild and retool with solid veterans that can put us over the top in some certain areas. And so I think it makes sense to go out and spend some money to make yourself better. And I think Edmonds, you mentioned Tremaine Edmonds. I think, to me, he's kind of top of the list for me. Maybe Brown is a guy, that is a guy that could shore up their offensive line. And if you sign Orlando Brown, and like Mark said, you move Trent Brown back to right tackle, now you're looking at it saying, all right, our offensive line is set. We're done at offensive line, right? You probably draft a right tackle a little bit later on, day 2, day 3, guy who can hopefully step in for Trent Brown after he plays next year because he's on a 1-year deal. Maybe you re-sign Trent Brown next year. Who knows, right? But either way, you bring in an Orlando Brown, and all of a sudden your offensive line solidified. So now that's no longer a need in the draft. So now you look at it and say, all right, yeah, we need some depth pieces, but we don't need a starter right away. All right, well, if we don't need a starter, then what else do we want to do? Well, all right, do we need a wide receiver, or do we need a cornerback, or what else do we do? And so I really do think, Dark Blue Goats and Dad said, they had bad coaching, which they did. And I think that they fixed that, which is a good thing. And I do agree that this is an important offseason. Look, I said it last year. I said at the beginning of the year last year, my dad, I credit my dad with this, and I agree with him as soon as he said it, but he was the first one to say it, to me at least, that, last year, the Patriots were in a holding pattern last year. They weren't tanking. They weren't saying this season doesn't matter, because Belichick will never say the season doesn't matter, but they were in a holding pattern. They didn't have a ton of money in the offseason. They couldn't really spend where they wanted to spend. So they figured, let's get better, right? Let's, rebuild a little bit. And then, we'll really make the push in 2023. We're doing a bunch of renovations in the stadium. Those will be done in 2023. Mac Jones will be going into his third year. So, yeah, okay, holding pattern 2022, and let's really try to make a push in 2023 and see what happens. And so I think that that's plausible. Again, what does that look like? I don't know, right? And I'm not sure where that goes. But if you're able to bring in a guy like Orlando Brown, and even if you bring in a guy, like Tremaine Edmonds as well, well, now you say, all right, we need a corner. We need probably a wide receiver maybe, right? And so that's the thing. So we'll see what happens. I think we'll be having some conversations early next week. I think we'll be doing some podcasts early next week is what I'm saying to you. I think Monday, Tuesday, you'll be hearing some stuff about the Patriots making some big splashes. So I might be wrong, but that's kind of where I'm at. That's what I think is going to happen. So we shall see. But anyways, that's it. That's it, guys. I'm going to do my last segment here, and then I'll get you guys out of here. We'll have a little bit of a quicker show today. And then, of course, you'll be back next week with our regular show. And you guys know we'll do instant reaction shows whenever we have to. If there's a big free agent signing, if the Patriots make a big trade. I did forget to ask Mark about Jalen Ramsey, which I should have asked him about. But nevertheless, I think that the Ramsey trade, if the Patriots were to trade for Ramsey, I think that makes a ton of sense. You probably don't have to give up quite as much either as you would have in years past. So I like the thought of that. Again, whether they can make it happen or not, I don't know. But I like the thought of that. So, all right. Anyways, here we go. Final segment of the episode.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This Week in Sports History.
All right. So I got two for This Week in Sports History, two of them. The first one comes from 1930. Okay. It's from today in 1930, so March 8th, 1930. And that was Babe Ruth signs a 2-year contract for $160,000. Yankees GM Ed Barrow says that no one will ever be paid more than Babe Ruth. He's a little bit off on that one, but let's take a look. $160,000 in 1930. Let's see what it says. $160,000 in 1930 would be, wow. Maybe he wasn't wrong, because $160,000 in 1930 is the equivalent in purchasing power to about never mind. I read that wrong. I thought the decimal point was another zero, was another comma. I mean, $2.8 million. So yeah, I think I would say pretty confident in saying that Babe Ruth, people have been paid more than Babe Ruth, but still 2 years, $160,000 in 1930 is a ridiculous amount of money. And then, of course, in March 8th, 1971, Joe Frazier ending Muhammad Ali's 31-fight winning streak at MSG, where Matt is right now. And he retains the heavyweight boxing title by unanimous points decision over 15 rounds in what was called the fight of the century. So that's March 8th, 1971. So anyways, some cool moments there in the middle of March. So that's all I got for you today. That's all I got for you today. We appreciate Mark coming on again, as always. We will have some news. There's some news that we have about the podcast. Can't really share it with you yet. But again, the YouTube will be changing at the end of the month. We will give you that information. We'll give you all those links that you can subscribe there. We're also going to be creating a Twitch page as well. So we'll have you on Twitch as well. And then, of course, you'll be able to view us on Twitter. But again, as I said, the stream, as far as the RSS feed, the podcast stream is going to be exactly the same. You're not going to have to do anything. You don't have to subscribe to someone else. You don't have to go. That's it. Doesn't matter. You're done. So, which is good. So, anyways, we'll have more of that information. Maybe not next week, but certainly in the coming weeks. We'll get you all that information ahead of time. And I still have access to this website, to this YouTube. So what I might end up doing is even afterwards, I might just do a quick video, post some of those links down the bottom just so you can have them. And then we'll kind of go from there. All right. But thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. Enjoy talking to you. Love all you guys. And I mean, it's almost the new league year. It's almost the 2023 NFL season is upon us, right around the corner. This is great. So we know football never stops, of course, but this long, crazy long 2.5 month for the Patriots, at least 2.5 month off season is finally over, and we can get back into what we care about, which is football. So enjoy the weekend, guys, and hopefully I'll be talking to you early next week, breaking down some big free agent signings by the Patriots.